Well, that was amazing. I think that's the
Yeah.
first time I've actually seen the whole video play. Did you see the whole video play,
Yeah, I
George?
did.
That was weird. And it didn't play at all in the stream I did just a little while ago for TTGDA. If you're not a TTGDA member, maybe you should become one. That is the Tabletop Game Designers Association, which is something that I started with Elizabeth Hargrave and Jeff Engelstein in regards to raising the profile of game designers in particularly North America, but we have membership from around the world. And because a lot of people deal with American contract law. So that's kind of where we're going with that. Anyway, hey, we have somebody here with us today. We have Eric Olsen. Welcome to the show, Eric. How are you?
I'm terrific. Thanks. Thanks so much for having me. And I was not familiar with that organization that you started. Can you just give the acronym one more time?
Yeah, sure.
I might check it out myself.
Sure. It's ttgda.org would be the website.
Awesome.
And yeah, basically, we're a professional organization that is trying to raise the profile of game design as a profession, right? So getting names listed at Barnes and Noble, hopefully someday in Amazon, you know, contracts, all that kind of stuff, grievances, again, you know, publisher databases, those types of things. So it is something that we hope to. This is our second full year. We've had 1 year. This is the start of our second year, and we really hope to do some good work in that regard. But Eric, can you lift your chest up just a little bit, just so people know why you're? There it is. Eric's the designer of Flip 7. Everybody, I don't know if you do that because we hear a lot about Flip 7. Like we hear a lot about Flip 7, but never about Eric Olsen, and that's kind of sad because he's a pretty cool guy, right?
Well, just to tie back into your very first, well, that's a very, very kind thing to say. But just to tie back into your kind of raising the profile of designers, which I feel really strongly about, right? And I think it's probably you could make the same argument for books and book publishing. But one nice thing that the Op did, who I licensed this game to, is they put my name on the front, which if you look at most little games like this, if you go to whatever local mom and pop toy store or game store that you go to, or you go to Walmart, you go wherever you go, and you look through the games that this is next to, the Unos and the Skip-Bos and so on. It's not typical to put a designer's name on a game. So if you get a bigger game, like a Ticket to Ride or a Settlers type of a game, Alhambra, Seven Wonders, those types of games, then for some reason, you'll see the designers' names. But designers make all kinds of games. And, helping to raise the profile of designers, no matter what types of games they're designing, I think is a great goal.
Yeah. I think that's kind of why we decided to do this in a way, was because it is something that is hopefully, an indelible fingerprint that you as Eric Olsen put on, or you as George put on, or me as Sen put on our specific designs that make it feel like a design that maybe only we could have made, that there's some authorship and some ownership of the idea. I know there's other people who, really kind of think it's more of a team effort, in terms of like the graphic designer and the illustrator. And it's true that games are a bigger product than, say, a book is. The book might have a cover artist, might have the layout, might have editors and readers and all that kind of stuff. But I still think like the seminal idea coming from the designer is a very, very important thing. Because without that, then none of the rest of these people have anything to do about the game anyways, right? So they can do other stuff, totally. But anyways, so Eric Olsen, this is your life. tell us, how did you get into game design? Well, first of all, tell us about your history as a gamer. You mentioned Alhambra, you mentioned Ticket to Ride. Tell us about your journey from gamer to game designer.
Yeah, sure. So that's funny because I'm old enough to remember That's Your Life reference. But let's, like a lot of designers that I've talked to, players in general. I started playing games when I was really little, and I played all the classics, what I consider classics these days. Parcheesi and Candyland and Sorry and Risk. Then you move into Risk and Monopoly and those types of games. Stratego, I loved Stratego. I'm actually working on a Stratego variant, you could call it, because I love the original game so much. And I continued to play games, maybe a little bit of a break, and actually never a break, just always games. They're always games. In high school, it was almost all cards, though. It's almost all playing poker with change with my little group of friends that we had. And as a matter of fact, we can maybe come back to it, but that's where the inspiration 30 years later, the inspiration for this game came from me thinking back to a game that we had played clear back when I was in high school. And then went off to school and learned some more card games that I didn't know about. Even played some bridge. I love chess, and then came the wave of kind of newer games. And, so I, just like you guys, I kind of like all kinds of games. Like I like two-player strategy, abstract games. I like fun party types of games. It kind of depends on the group I'm playing with. Am I playing with my family? Am I playing when my kids were little? Am I playing when my kids are teens? Am I playing with my, the dudes? Like who? Like kind of depends who, what type of game night I'm at. But I never thought about game design. Totally different. But I can relate it back when I was 15 years old. I spent a lot of time in the summer at the swimming pool. And a lifeguard said to me, "You should just become a lifeguard because you're here all the time anyway." And it had never occurred to me that you could be a lifeguard as a job. It just never had clicked, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought all these years of playing games, but obviously when you stop and think about it, somebody's behind those games, right? But you just go to the store and you get the game and you play the game and you never really give it a thought. And during COVID, my kids were home and the table was messy. And I started taking some stuff that was on the table and making like little pictures with it and asking the kids what it was. And then they started to take the stuff and rearranging it, making little pictures. And to really sum up a 1.5 year long process, that became my first game, Glyphics. So hieroglyphics, but just the glyphics. And you could call it Pictionary, but with pieces. So you're trying to make a word, but you're using kind of what looks like 3D printed pieces. So it could be wavy lines, could be triangles, could be little stick figures, and so on. And that was like the lifeguard comment, like, "Hey, you should be a lifeguard." All of a sudden, I dove into this crazy world of games, game manufacturing, game design, game publishing. Sen, I didn't even know I didn't even know game publishing and self-publishing, licensing. I didn't know any of it. So I had to be, I had to learn the very basics about what the industry is like. And it's been fascinating and I'm still learning. So that was COVID. That was the beginning of it for me in terms of design. Flip 7 was my second game. And that was actually going to be my first game that I did myself, was this game. And right when I was getting ready to do it, I was approached by USAopoly, and they're now the op. And so I got a partner and we pivoted to a different game. And I'm lucky because I have a little bit of experience on both sides for a designer. So I have some experience licensing. I've got 4 licensed games and I have 3 self-published games with 2 more coming out next year. And it's a really nice benefit to me to see both sides of the coin and know what goes into both sides. So when a publisher, for example, I'm trying to license a game and the publisher says, XYZ, I can understand more where they're coming from, that type of thing. So that's more or less it, I suppose.
What a great story, and I think it's true that if you find yourself playing games and like thinking about games that maybe you're already designing them, and you should just be a game designer, right? I think that happened. Did that happen to you, George?
I mean, pretty much, yeah. We were just, it was, it was, I had all these ideas, but it was like, well, that's one of the surprising things when I went to conventions was finding out, because, if you want to be, I guess I'm a programmer and I went to university to be a computer science. Like, if you want to be a welder, you go to tech school and you learn welding. But, like, I've met almost no one who is a game designer who went to formal education to just, these are people with talents who decided, I have game designs and I'm gonna pursue it. Um, so I think that was the biggest barrier for me is realizing that, I'm allowed to do this even though I haven't gone through some formal set of steps to
Yeah,
get a stamp on myself.
it's interesting. There are definitely formal game design schools.
There are now,
For
they're
now, yeah.
becoming more, right?
Yep. And I mean, hopefully that will help again with the elevation of the profession. But like you said, I mean, the mass amount of people out there who are vested in game design and published in game design did not go to school formally for game design. I think we're just starting to see that edge, that leading edge of people who graduated, from New York Game School or whatever, like Marcel and Lehman, starting to, excuse me, really um, get their games into publishers' hands and things like that. So it's happening and it's coming. I don't know if that will cause like creeping credentialism. I don't believe it will, because I don't think there's any. It's not that I don't think there's any weight behind a credential. I don't think there's anything stopping people who don't have credentials from creating equally as good games, right? So
Yeah, I
there you go.
think, like we were talking about before the show, with games, unlike maybe some other professions, it really comes down to the fun factor. If you can design a game that is fun, it really doesn't matter what your background is. The background might help you on production aspects, or it might help you in the networking aspect, and those aspects are really really important, right?
Mm.
Um, but if you can come up with a really fun game, um, and really flesh it out, right? So, hey, Josh, hey, Sasha. So, Josh, simple games are awesome. Simple games are awesome, but simple games aren't always fun just because they're simple. And I think that's the trick. So, a lot of people will look at a simple game that is fun, and they'll be like, "Oh, that was easy. That was an easy game to make." Maybe it was an easy game to make, but maybe it wasn't, because balancing trying to make a simple game and still make it fun, and find a simple game that somebody else hasn't already done at this point, is not the easiest thing in the world, because if it was easy, a lot more people would probably do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, that was a perfect segue into our topic. Well set up. Yeah. So what we were going to talk about today is where this actually came from. Is, and I swear this is the only time I'm going to mention magic during this entire show. I
We
was
almost mentioned magic.
I was listening to Mark Rosewater's podcast, and he was talking about like when they're designing sets, you can you can design for interest and you can design for fun. Interest being like an intellectual engagement with the product, mechanics and that sort of thing, and fun being an emotional engagement. Like, and then he sometimes has to tell R&D, you're making this set too interesting, which I thought was a fascinating thought. How important it is to incorporate that emotional response in, and especially in something that's simpler, where like you don't have room for a lot of mechanics. And so this would be an interesting conversation. Yeah, and here we go. So,
Yeah. Just to tag on to that, I think that's maybe a false dichotomy, but also a good dichotomy to talk about, right? And I think there's going to be more of a spectrum than there is a 2 points on a opposite side of something. But I think that is a very insightful way of like breaking it down. The reality is probably a little bit different than that, but yeah, I mean, Rosewater. For those of you who don't know, and if you like collectible card games, especially Magic, but any collectible card games, and if you like designing them, you should do yourself a favor and spend about, I don't know, a 5-year period listening to Mark Rosewater's uh,
It's only 1,200
long,
episodes or
yeah,
something.
long and copious amounts of podcasts. He is the design lead for Magic the Gathering, and he's been that for, I don't know, decades.
2004 or 2005, he's been
Yeah, so
the
like
lead,
like
but been doing it since
20 years,
'94.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's been with the Magic brand for almost ever.
Mm.
So he possibly knows more about Magic than even like the designer of Magic knows by now, right? Because
Mm.
Richard Garfield does not have a hand in the design of the sets anymore, really. And it's really Rosewater who's running all the games or running the teams that design everything. But anyways, that is a great dichotomy. Let's talk about it, even if it might be a little bit false. So, games for interest versus games for feeling, emotion, and fun. I'm going to throw a word out there that some of you might know, and if you maybe got your game design degree, you would know this. It's called Fiero, and Fiero is a term that I can't even remember who coined it. Excuse me, I'll look it up in a second. But they are talking about that hands in the air feeling when you do something in a game. Fiero, right? It's that fire that ignites inside of you when you do something cool. And that, I think, is what Rosewater is meaning when he's talking about that fun factor, that emotional factor. It might be something like that. That might be part of it. And then the interest is like the heads down, nose to the grindstone, calculating, what the possibilities are and the combinations are of all these cards and things in Magic. And I think he's exactly right. Like if you go too far one way, you lose half your audience. If you go too far the other way, you lose the other half of the audience. And so balancing those sets to have a little bit of each, and within the whole set, like you can't do it on each card, but within a set you can. And I think that's really fascinating. So let's go and talk about Flip 7, because that is Eric's game that really does encapsulate a lot of one side of the game. But
For
that
sure.
doesn't mean there's no other side to it. There is odds and there is calculation. Can you tell us how you came up with Flip 7, specifically the deck distribution? Because that to me is like, chef's kiss in terms of simple design that makes a huge difference once you understand like odds, right? Odds making. So,
So I love that you asked me that for a couple of reasons, and I will also just throw out to you. So Sen, I don't suppose, in addition to being a magic and game nerd, that you're a music theater nerd.
I am also a music theater nerd. I'm a huge my kids are in musical theater.
So
Uh,
Fiero,
yeah.
Fiero from Wicked.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh.
It's
Maybe that's where
Fiero.
she got it from. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
for any music nerds out there, her the main interest for her in Wicked is Fiero. So that's how I know Fiero. I did not know the game design, throw your hands in the air version of Fiero. So yeah, so Flip 7, it's kind of cool. When I made my first game, Glyphics, during COVID, it unlocked something, and I'm sure you've heard something like this before. A lot of life coaches and different people like that talk about this phenomenon, and the phenomenon is, what you focus on, that's where all your brain energy goes. So for example, if you're thinking about, gosh, I don't know, your fantasy football, and you go to a restaurant and the people next to you are talking about their fantasy football, you will tune in because that's where your brain is focused. But if they're talking about, a pasta recipe, your brain won't tune in. Does that make sense? So when I designed my first game, it unlocked something in my brain, and I just started getting more ideas for games. Like more ideas started to come, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, that could be a game, or maybe that could be a game, or maybe that could be a game. That had never happened to me in my entire life, and it was like flipping a switch. So with that, one of the things that I went back to, I played a lot of poker back in high school with my friends. We just played with spare change, and we got bored playing regular poker, so we played every crazy variation of poker, and then we started making up our own games. So one type of game that you can play is a 7-card stud game, where you put 7 cards out, you flip them one at a time, and you can bet on each card as it gets flipped over. Whoever has the best poker hand starts the betting, and you just bet, and whoever has the best hand, wins the game at the end. One of my friends said, well, what would happen if we didn't do poker? What would happen if we just did it straight numbers? Instead of betting on poker, we're betting on whoever has the highest cards, right? And we did that. And then he said, well, whoever has the highest, everyone else is going to drop out. So we need something to keep everybody in, right? So this is the kicker. I'm going to tell you the kicker because it wasn't my idea originally. And so I want to give my buddy Rod credit whenever I can. He said, well, how about if you get a pair, the pair drops out, right? So each of us gets a jack, right? And then I get a queen, you get a king, you get a 9. And then the next round, I get another jack. My jacks drop out. All of a sudden, I'm way behind. Or another way to look at it is, Sen, you got a 5 and a 7, and I have a queen and a king. Well, you stay in because you're hoping I'm going to hit a queen or a king. Because if I do, I'm down to 10 points, and you shoot up above me, right? So it's this. Oh, I'm gonna stay because the next card could put me back in it, right? That anticipation. So after 30 years after high school, I went back to that idea, and at least 30. I know he's like, really? Maybe it's 40. Maybe it's 40 years. So I went back to that idea, and I thought, man, this was a really fun game that we used to play, and I bought a couple decks of cards and started playing it with my son, who was about 13, 14. And we tried to figure out a way to bet on it that would work as a game, like Wits and Wagers. You bet. There's a couple games out there where you can bet, and I couldn't make it work as a betting game. Didn't work. So my first design issue was, what do you do with the pairs? Because it has to matter that you got a pair. So back in high school, you still got to play. The pairs just dropped. So the first design decision was, when you get a pair, you're out. That was the first decision, right? That way we don't need to bet on it. You're kind of betting just by staying in. You're betting, right? And then we started playing, and I bought like 6 decks of regular cards and made a big deck. And it was boring to get 2s and 3s and 4s and 5s. It was boring. And I said to my son, it would be better if we had more high cards and less low cards. He's like, okay. So at first I split the cards up into, I know I'm getting into the weeds, but the deck evolved, right? So at first I took the numbers like 2 through 6, and I did 4 each of those. And then like 7 through 10, I did 6 each of those. And then the high cards, I did 8 each. So there were more high cards and less low cards. And that was a huge improvement. Like, oh, all of a sudden it's more fun. And, after a week, it was something clicked. And it's like, well, if that's more fun, let's just take it all the way. Just take it, extrapolate. Why don't we do that all the way down, right? So that's where my upside down deck came from. It wasn't until the game was published by the op and posted on BGG that I actually found out that another inventor had come up with an upside down deck, 15 years ago. But it doesn't surprise me. There's a reason that certain mechanics work, and they work because of the way that the game is designed, right? My game, like Flip 7, wouldn't be fun if there were the same number of each denomination, right? And I know that because I tried it. It
It just
wasn't
isn't fun.
fun. It didn't work. So the deck evolved the way that it evolved because it was more fun, because it made sense, right? So it doesn't surprise me that other game designers would come to the same type of conclusion. It's also, look at King of Tokyo. King of Tokyo uses 6 dice. You know what other game uses 6 dice? Yahtzee. There's there's a reason that certain amount of dice are better. Would 3 dice work for Yahtzee or King of Tokyo? Not
Mm,
very well. So you can already get a feeling, right? Like 5 dice, maybe 6 dice, maybe 7 dice, maybe, but there's a sweet spot. And how do you find the sweet spot? You just play it a lot,
yeah.
right? You play it a lot. When you can, you borrow from other games that are successful, and see what they've done. So the upside down numbers came from us just playing it and realizing, low cards are not fun. They're not exciting.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you made every card worthwhile in a way. Like a low card is worthwhile because you get to keep on playing,
Mhm.
right? And a high card is worthwhile because if you go out, you score the points, right? And the
Yeah.
game is all about points, so you don't really want a low card because it's not worth points, but it still is some points and it allows you to maybe get the 10 the next time, right?
It maybe lets you get the 7 card bonus. So
Even
if you get
that
a lot
too.
of low cards and you get to flip 7, you get a bonus. So people that are getting low cards are thinking, you know, maybe I'll just go for the bonus.
Mhm. So, oh, George, go ahead.
Um, I'm curious where in that design process you decided to add the interaction, the draw three and the freeze and the other elements.
So pretty early on, I had a couple people suggest to me, this game is great. And remember, I was very, very, very new to game design. And you guys have played. I've played games my whole life, but I've met people in the last 5 years that put me to shame. Like they've played so many games, and so I hadn't thought of modifiers right away. And I had a couple people suggest modifiers. I'm like, oh, of course. A game that my group plays all the time is called Rage.
Mhm.
So Rage is a classic Trump game. Basically, they took a regular deck of cards, and instead of having 4 suits, made 6 suits. They made the numbers go from 0 to 15. Then they put in some, get you cards, like cards that will change Trump or get rid of Trump, or positives and negatives. So early on, I still have some pictures, thank goodness, of some of the ones that we tried. I started, of course, with a wild card. I put in some pluses and minuses. Um, what else did I try? I tried a different version of the second chance card. So we tried a bunch of different cards. A steel card. I actually like the steel card. The op did not end up keeping that steel card, but in my original version, I thought it worked pretty well. You could take somebody else's card and give them the steel card, and the steel card had a value. It was a 0 value. So George, I could take your 10 and give you the 0. We would like swap cards. But for example, the kinds of things that you don't find out so for the designers out there listening, a wild is the natural one, right? Oh, with flip 7, a wild would be great. I can call it whatever I want. Well, it's not great because it's so random. It's just like one more random card. It's actually kind of a meh card. It just didn't do much. The card that I'm the most proud of are the flip 3 and the freeze cards. And when my original game, they were on the same card. It was a
Oh,
freeze flip 3 on a split,
Oh, okay.
and you would give it to the player, and they would have to choose. They got to pick their poison, right, George? So if I give it to
Okay.
you, you either freeze yourself or pick 3,
Right.
I
right?
like that too. That's kind of
Yeah,
cool.
that's actually pretty cool. Yeah.
And I was really proud of that card. And the reason I was proud of that card is because it's very specific to Flip 7. Like it works
Yes,
with
that
Flip
is.
7, but it doesn't necessarily work with a lot of other card games.
Yeah, I think in my plays of Flip 7, that draw 3 is just like it's like awesome and the death of me all at the same time. Like I've been knocked out of the game so many times by Flip 3. But also there's definitely been times when like, yeah, that made me win the game because I drew 3 cards and I didn't
I
have any of
did.
those. And for some reason I just maxed out my hand and maybe get close to getting that Flip 7, that actual 7 cards. I don't think I've ever got that in my life. That's a goal. That's a life goal, by the way. Like I love games where you can push your luck so far that you like almost win the game by shooting the moon, right? I love
Shooting the
games where
moon.
you get to shoot the moon, and Flip 7 has that little je ne sais quoi that leads to those big emotional Fiero moments. And I wrote it in chat that Fiero was a term that's popularized by Dr. Jane McGonigal, and then Dr. Nicole Lazaro uses it in her four factors of fun game design paradigm as well. So lots of academics are using the term Fiero in terms of that. It's called like a hard fun where you win against a tough opponent. And I think push your luck in general is that kind of big moment. And Flip 7, when you boil it down, is a push your luck game. Like, am I going to bust? Right? Like, not like
Yeah.
poker, but like blackjack, right?
Mhm.
So it's interesting that the emotional valence that you get out of simply drawing a card and that decision, should I stay in or should I pass, am I in, oh, can I do this, I have like a 7 and a 6 showing and it's like, ugh. If I get a 2 or 3, that's awesome, but if I get a 10, then I'm definitely out the next time. I don't want this, I don't want any of this. And it's really interesting how a lot of people who play very conservatively will actually score pretty well, but they'll never actually win, right? It's somebody has to do the risk taking to actually get that big point jump, usually, unless everybody's playing very conservatively. Then it's not a
Even if
fun
they're
game.
Yeah, something
even
about
if
it.
like you, even if they're forced to, and it
Yeah.
happens to because they're forced to do it, they they end up doing it. I've also seen people start conservative and then change their tune,
Yeah.
depending on the peer pressure, depending on the table, right? Who,
I
who
also
they're kind of playing with.
I think once people figure out the odds, that may change their play style as well. But what I really like about the forced play of freeze or flip 3, not the split card, but any of the fun cards, what I like about it is it actually shows people who may be playing conservatively like how fun it actually is to take a risk every now and then, right? And I think that's really interesting that you can force people to have fun, right? That's kind of cool.
It's fun. It was fun to do it, to come up with which modifier cards, which action cards, whatever you want to call them, which ones would work, and then how many to put in. I mean, even simple things, right? Saying like, we're going to go 1 through 10, we're going to go 1 through 12, we're going to go 1 through 15. Like how many cards do we even put in? Like those types of things. So the balancing of it, so that those cards show up. And it's not balancing Lords of Waterdeep or something, but the balance is important, because if the balance isn't important, it goes back to the fun factor, right? Anybody, you don't have to be a game genius to be playing a game and realize that something is out of whack, right? And if you feel like something is out of whack, if you feel like you lost unfairly or somebody else won unfairly, or there's too much of this or too much of that, it can ruin the experience for some people. And so, modifier cards are fun, but too many modifiers is chaotic.
Right.
But no modifier cards would be, a little slower, not nearly as much fun as when it's so funny. You get a freeze card for somebody that doesn't want to play a bad card on somebody else. Have you ever seen that? So you got a player that doesn't want to play a gotcha card on anybody.
Oh, they'll freeze themselves.
Yeah.
And they got to look around and they're like, I'm so sorry. They're apologizing while they give it to somebody. It's great. It's fun.
I've also seen this dynamic in a couple of games that I've played where like people will thank me for freezing them because they have the sort of like they will just keep going till they hit 7 or till they bust, and then like they could be winning and they're like, like there's this weird sort
Like
of
you
relief
save
that can
them
come from
from
it.
themselves,
Yeah,
right?
it's fascinating to me. Yeah.
That's great. So
I
yeah,
think.
so
Oh, keep going. Go.
Yeah.
yeah, well, Flip 7 has a lot of those big wow emotional moments for most groups. Somebody goes for it, and it doesn't even matter. They go for it, and if they get it, there's a big oh, and if they get it, everyone's and that's one part of that element that you were talking about, right? It's a simple decision, but you're emotionally invested in it, even though it's a simple decision. And one of the things that I'm doing now more consciously that maybe in the beginning wasn't conscious is paying attention to exactly that question that you asked, which is, can I create those moments on purpose? And how much is somebody going to have their head down versus how much are people going to be engaging and interacting around the table? Um, and I love to look at games that I personally enjoy and ask myself, you know, this game over here, it doesn't have a lot of big wow moments, but I love it and I keep coming back
Mhm.
to it. Why do I keep coming back to it? Okay, and then other games like King of Tokyo is similar to Flip 7 in some ways, and there's a huge luck element, and there's those moments, right, where you roll and you get something and you're like, or you get a card and you can use the card that you got in some cool way. It's a King of Tokyo is a good balance of those two things. I mean, a really good balance. It has the aha moments, it has those emotional moments, but it also has the kind of, boy, I wonder if I could use that card. I wonder if I should buy that. I wonder what I should do with my roll. How should I break it up? I mean, it's a huge amount of luck, anyone that knows plays, but it also has that little bit of that thinking strategy aspect so that you feel like you have some creative agency in what you're doing. And as a game designer now, I'm start to look at those games and see, what is it about Lords of Waterdeep that keeps me coming back to that type of a game?
Hmm.
What is it about Seven Wonders? So Sushi Go was the result of the Seven Wonders mechanic, right? It was a conscious decision playing Seven Wonders where you get the cards, pass, get a new set of cards, take one, pass it. That's Sushi Go. That was a conscious decision to take a more complicated game for people that like that type of a game and make a kind of a simpler version that is easier for some people to play, but keeps the core mechanic. So Sushi Go kind of distilled one of the elements of Seven Wonders that's so good, right? Is that the cards are coming around. But if you're kind of a novice game player, setting up Seven Wonders and looking at the board can be a little overwhelming. Sushi Go is not quite so overwhelming when you just open it up and
And
look at it.
they're happy little sushis. They have smiley
Yes.
faces on them.
Aren't they? I
They're so
mean,
cute.
what a cute little cover. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
I think
I
there's
mean, it's
something.
not the Colossus of Rhodes, but it's good.
It's cute.
I think what we there people often think of randomness as like almost a pejorative, but variance
Mm.
is fun. Like that is often like if you play the game the same way every time and it comes out the same every time, it's not a good game.
That's
I think
that's
It's
not a game at
broken.
all,
yeah,
right?
It's
actually,
broken. It's
um,
broken. Yeah.
I think those sort of basically a draft format sort of thing where you get a hand and pass. The way at least for me, the way that works, that you start with variance and then you get decreasing variance as you go, and you get more information. So those two
Yeah.
sliders shift, and that is a really engaging mechanic.
And you get to like craft your hand, right? You're
Yes.
you're you're managing your own hand, and I think that to some people is the way they like randomness. Is like, I start off with this, what can I do with it? And for a lot of people, that's actually the show of skill. Is I took this crap that I got dealt and I turned it into a win, and that's a positive thing for people. It's why deck building, it's why Magic the Gathering, drafting formats, all these things are very popular because it takes randomness and like gamifies randomness even more than it is, right? Another thing that happens a lot with randomness is what most people who are semi-serious to serious about games don't like is when the randomness happens and then that's what it is, right? People like to be able to mitigate the randomness a little bit, like, and just feel clever about how they take that randomness and change it into something that is positive for them. And I think that's at that other end of the game spectrum, right? Where
Yeah.
it's not going to be necessarily that big emotional instance from the flip of a card, but it also could be, right? Because I mean, definitely played Magic where it's like, come on, top deck, come on, top deck, that card I need. And like,
Totally,
yes,
absolutely, yeah.
that card is amazing. And and I cheer. I might go on to lose still, but at least I got the card that I wanted that time. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about those sliders as well, different sliders, but the sliders from, serious to fun, and maybe games at this level are serious fun, and you can like tweak them more one way or the other depending on a lot of other factors, like do your sushi pieces have smiley faces on them? That's more towards the fun side than the serious side.
Yeah, yeah. I think part of it is also the entire zeitgeist of, what do American game players, what are they looking for? What are German game players looking for? What are French game players looking for? Also, how popular, as a game designer, what's your goal as a game designer? Um, you can make a really, really, really good hobby game, and but it won't ever be Uno. It won't. It
Right.
won't sell. It's not going to sell like Uno. Um, but a lot of people don't like Uno, but it's still the number one selling card game and has been and will continue to be, possibly for a while. So, there's also from a design element of what are people looking to play, and so, and doing some catering to that. Um, the types of games I design, are just the ideas that I kind of come up with. I haven't come up with a very complicated 4-hour board game. Maybe someday I will. But part of me also keeps in mind on a Friday night when everybody comes home and they're tired and it's been a long week and they just want to sit down, and have a beer and play a game and not stress out. What can you put on the table?
Right. Yeah, I think like you said, or we were talking. Maybe this was offline when we were talking about, but different games, like different movies, serve different purposes and different audiences, and you could
Exactly.
be the same person, could be different audiences at different times of the day, of the week, of the month, of whatever, right? Because of whatever pressures they're feeling in life and what interests them at the time. So I think you're right that there's different tools for different jobs, right?
Yeah, when you go into Flip 7 game, you can't be thinking, I'm such a good card player. I'm gonna you can't go in thinking, well, I played bridge and I'm awesome, so I'm gonna use my skill. You got to go into Flip 7, or Uno or Taco Cat or whatever the game is, knowing what type of game it is and kind of
Mhm.
roll with it and have fun, right? You're not playing terraforming, you're not playing lords, you're not playing that type of a game, right? If you want to say, hey, I've seen 7 12s come out, so maybe I shouldn't risk it, go ahead. But that little amount of card counting is probably not going to save you, right?
Right. So, George, does this get to the crux of your question? Or are
Yeah, I
there
think
other
I think
parts that
we've
we
been
need to talk about?
I think we've been crossing it quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So out there in Meeple Syrup Land, I see Sasha and I see Luke and I see Kevin, Deadpan, I see Josh out there and more. If you're out there and you have questions about game design that maybe any of us can help you with. Eric's here right now, so we're here all the time. So ask Eric; he's like the special guest. But also, you're right, Eric. We started off this conversation with Josh. Joshua saying, simple games are awesome, and then you said, yeah, but they're really hard to make, and it's true, right? Distilling down this experience to this like small deck of cards that's just numbers and colors and not much else, is an incredibly difficult job when you can throw whatever you want inside this giant box that's going to cost 50 bucks or 60 bucks. You actually have kind of an easier job at it, even though it seems like a much more complex game. I think streamlining and refining a game down to its very like quintessential elemental nature, like Flip 7 is kind of pretty much almost as elemental as it can get. It might be like elemental plus one, right? It's like
Well, yeah,
it's not just rolling dice.
it's pretty elegant. It's an elegant card game in its way, I think. But you've done more complicated games. I look at the more complicated games and I think, man, I know how much time that I've taken on balancing and play testing my games. And my games, most people would say, are pretty straightforward, pretty simple. In 5 minutes, I can tell you how to play. Um, and but they still require a lot of dedication that I think maybe some people don't well, oh, that's such a simple game. They're simple games, and yet the play testing required is a lot.
Yeah, I don't think it's less. I
And
think it actually might be more because there's less there's less like fluff and filling.
There's nowhere to hide.
Exactly. There's no rules lawyering to hide. There's absolutely no way to put an edge case in that game because it is so pure, right? It
great,
is what it
George.
is,
Nowhere
right?
to hide, nowhere to run to, right? But and it also lets you know when it's not working.
Yes, very very fast.
You go to the table and you play it, and you can play it, and you're not getting you're not getting the reactions, right? Like it's okay. Well, I don't want an okay game. I want a game that people are going to say, "Hey, remember that game we played a couple weeks ago? Can we try that game again?" I mean, that's what you're looking for. And I guess I've discovered that the smallest tweaks can have the biggest difference. And that continued play testing where you try something and you try something else, and in a way, like you were saying at the beginning, I might come up with the original idea and push it out there, but I love to get the feedback, because how else do you know if you have a good game? So put it on the table, watch people play, see what their reactions are, ask for feedback. Even say, does anyone have any ideas? What was fun? What wasn't fun? What would make it better? What do you want to see? And then, the hardest part sometimes is people want to play games that they already know. And for me, as a game designer, I've talked to other designers about this. Getting the guinea pigs to keep
Mm.
playing, oh, wait, did we play this one before? Yeah, but I changed this stuff. Getting those guinea pigs is sometimes tough.
Yeah, I think playtesters are definitely, our lifeblood and very special people who you need to thank and kept fed and plied with
Yeah,
alcohol
yeah.
and whatever they want, right?
Pizza, beer, you name it. Just
Yeah.
come on over.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I don't actually believe that a simpler game is easier to find playtesters for. I mean, you'll get to probably play with the same playtesters a little bit more, like 10 times over the course of an hour and a half versus
Right.
like one time in a much more complex game. But I think a lot of those playtesters might get burnt out of that one game much faster because it is just, it is what it is, guys. Let's not make it more than that. But you still need different playtesters to give you a look. And the other thing about like the simpler games is you really probably have to playtest them with people who are not core gamers, people who don't have that game
Yeah.
literacy that the person who has a 300 400 game collection of their own knows what it means to have a tableau or a splay or to draft cards. And so Flip 7, because of its mass appeal, you need to test with people who aren't gamers, and it's a different ball of wax, right? So it's an interesting thing.
Which is what we did, right? Test it with grandparents, test it with kids, test
Hmm.
it with, test it at the bar. Like, test it, put it in front of different groups and try to get a feel, and when by the way, not every game is great for every demographic. you know. But one nice thing about Flip 7 is it does reach a pretty wide demographic. The rules are pretty easy, the emotional response. But yeah, I absolutely agree with that in terms of the design and the play testing. It's key. You know, the play testing. You said Lifeblood. I've never used that before, but that's perfect. I couldn't do what I'm doing if I couldn't get people to try my games.
Right? Luke made a good comment here. Luke is an artist as well, and he said it's like art. Simple designs are harder to pull off because you can't hide behind all the bells and whistles. Right? It's true.
So
People
true.
are going to be less likely to buy the game because, oh, there's a cool component, or it's, has an IP attached to it that I like, or there's really neat miniatures. Right? There are some people who will buy a game and say, yeah, it's not the greatest, but it had cool miniatures, so I'm still glad I have it because they can like use those miniatures for other things, right? So it's different when you have this single deck of cards. It is such a different thing. I do have to tell you that one of my design partners, David and David was complaining about the box for Flip 7 like so much. And it's not just Flip 7's box, it's the style of box of those types of games. And it's because
So
it
the
doesn't look
original,
at
the original big box that was too big, or
Mhm.
the new Uno
No,
box.
the new Uno box. He likes the other one. But
I yeah, I prefer a two-piece box
yeah,
myself. Um,
yeah,
Obviously, I'm not in charge of those decisions at this point.
no.
But if
But
you want to, if you want to, you can look at it from a marketing point of view, which
that's exactly what it is,
at
really,
some
right?
point you have to, right? So I like a two-piece box, like maybe a taco cat box, or like, obviously some of my boxes, they just come apart, right?
Hmm.
I That's the kind of box that I like. But sometimes putting one deck of cards in a box like that, you need to be
Price just
careful. You need to be careful, or people are going to feel like you're selling them air, and you don't want to do that. You always want people to walk away feeling like they got a quality product for a good price. If people are thinking to themselves, man, I don't know if it was I should have paid that for it, that's not good, right? You never want people to think about how much they paid for the game ever. You want to get the game, pull the game out, play the game, and never ever ever think about the price. If they're thinking about the price, there was a problem. And this design should look familiar, because if you put a big UNO on it, it's the same, right?
Yeah.
It's the Uno box. It's not my favorite. I told you I used to play Rage a lot.
Hmm.
The old Rage decks
Yeah.
came to me.
Same
You got
style,
to
right?
split the deck up and slide it in, and the cards get in there. And
oh,
I don't
right,
love
yeah.
it, but you know what? It hangs up next to Uno, and that's nice.
Well, that's it, right? So I think like the medium is the message is a very famous saying in Canadian media. And it's the same with this. The box is the message, right? If it
Mhm.
has a similar box to Uno, then if you like Uno, maybe you like the game that is similarly packaged, right? At the same point of it's a point of sales device, right? That hanger
Yeah, yeah.
is could be at a point of sales, could be on a wall rack where it's going to have front facing, where it's not going to be stacked because those tags instantly say "hang me up," and there is some marketing zhuzhing around that. Some marketing genius in there said, "Hey, let's make it look like Uno." Because it is true. Like if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it probably is a duck. And if it looks like Uno, has the same number of cards roughly as Uno, in the same box as Uno, wait a minute. Is this as good as Uno? Our family loves Uno. Let's buy this too. And they find out that it's actually better than Uno.
I didn't
And then
say it. I
and
didn't
then they,
say it.
I said it. I said it, and I'm happy to say it again, really loud. It's better than Uno. And then they'll evangelize it to their friends and families. Like, hey, if you go to the game store, if you go to the toy store, Toys R Us, whatever, wherever the game is, because it is Flip 7, so it's like lots of places, more than just like a hobby shop. Hey, look for this box, pick it up. It's right where Uno is, right?
So I just before I hopped on the show, I had a couple people. So I'm in Boise, Idaho. I had a couple people text me and say, "Hey, did you see this news article? There's a new game pub that just opened up, like literally
in Boise, Idaho.
in Boise, like 10 days ago.
Cool.
So I reached out to the guy, and I said, I'm a local game designer. I'd love to swing by and check out your place, and I can bring some games over. And he's like, we've only been open a week, and two people have brought in Flip 7 already. So I already went and got that one. But I took him over some other games, and I just went and checked out his shop today, and I hope it takes off and does really well. But
there you go.
The reason I bring it up is that word of mouth is just that's really what it comes down to. Is people take the game and they play it, and then a couple people from that game night, go out the next day and throw it in their shopping cart, and that's how it works.
Yeah, and it's an easy sell. It's an easy buy. Other than the damn box, I'm kidding. But it is. It's like small and portable. And it's funny because David asked me. He just asked me this question. I haven't given an answer. He goes, "Is there a game that you carry around with you all the time?" And there are. I always have like a tin box of Tishu cards because I love Tishu, and I always have like at least one or two of the wallet games from.
Button Shy.
Yes, Button Shy, because they're made to be portable and they're 18 cards. And one of my friends works with me at the college, so whenever we have time, we just kind of said, "Hey, are you busy right now?" And if we don't have meetings or we're not seeing students, we just whip out a game and we'll play it. So those games are great, and I would buy a tin version of Flip 7. Just saying that. Pat and Tony and everybody else at top might be listening to this at some point in time.
A lot of people are with you. A lot of people, their favorite of the boxes that they've gone through so far is that promo box. I just moved over, so straight behind me, it's the little one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the littlest, tiniest box, and that box has never been for sale.
Mm-hmm.
That was a promo, a genius marketing move. So the game launched at Gen Con last year in 2024, and they gave away a couple thousand games. They just gave them away.
Yeah.
And the reason they gave them away is because of what you just said. Because they believed that if people took the game home and played it with their family or their friends on a game night, that other people would go buy the game. But a lot of people love that little tiny box because they can put it in their purse or put it in their bag or their suitcase, and it doesn't take up any space.
Luke, Tishu is kind of like Big Two. It's not exactly the same. It's a shedding game. Well, it's a climbing game, really. So it's not quite a trick taker, but you're trying to get rid of all your cards. It's a partner game, and that's why I like it, because you have to play with a partner, and you communicate with your partner through card play, and you get to hand out cards to each other. The goal of the game is to go out first, but remembering that you still have to score points. And it's actually a really great game. If you're ever around, I will teach you how to play that, Luke. It's awesome. Back to boxes, and specifically Flip 7. The other thing I would want for Flip 7, and I know like I'm like a raging environmentalist most of the time, but I would actually want a plastic card version of Flip 7, because it'd be indestructible, and then you could play it all the time, everywhere. It'd be awesome.
That's right. So, like half the games with Flip 7 I've played have been between ordering food and waiting for it to show up.
Exactly. That's why I mention it. So things like Tishu, you don't really do that, but Flip 7 is such a spontaneous one.
So a kind of a pool bar.
Spill safe, yeah.
Spill safe.
That's a spill safe version.
Yeah. I would splurge for that one too. But anyways, I may be a small minority.
You might not be the only person that has thrown that idea out there.
I know, because good ideas, people, great minds think alike, right?
I don't remember the game, so I apologize. But somebody came out with a pool version of the game this summer, and it did really well because it allowed people to take it poolside.
I don't know what that is, but I will look it up.
To look it up after the show, but it was a really good idea that you had for them.
in a time machine too,
In a
right?
time machine.
That's right. So, oh, look, everybody, it is 10 o'clock. I have to go because I have to teach really early tomorrow morning. But thank you so much, Eric, for showing up and telling us about the story, the origin of Flip 7, of what you did in games and how you're coming along. For everybody who doesn't know, you can go follow Eric's Instagram at Eric Olsen Games. And if you want to reach out to him, you can find him at eric at messytablegames.com. That's where he's doing the self publishing route. Like he said, he has a couple more games coming out from outside publishers and a couple more games that he's self publishing himself. So there you go. I don't think you can self publish other than yourself, but you know what I mean. Um, George, do you think we answered all the questions that we had about finding the fun and the difference between like introspective and like extroverted games and things? I don't
I
know what
think
else to
we
call them.
I think we made good headway on it. Yeah.
And I really do like that kind of thinking pattern. Like I said, I do believe it's a false dichotomy, and I believe
Mhm.
there's other things around there. But I think that it's a really interesting way of looking at it. And different people find different things fun, but there is something about that emotional valence versus the intellectual kind of, heads downness to it. There you go.
Even if it's not a jump out of your seat
Yes.
emotional,
Yeah,
even if
there's
even if it's lower key, like the satisfaction of
yes. I
placing a
did this thing.
card and like oh look at how long my wall is now because I got that card right where I needed it. Like that's a nice emotional satisfaction, even though you're not jumping
Yeah.
out of your chair, right?
Yeah, because you might knock the card down if you do that. So don't do that. Yeah. Oh, and Luke just said that Flip 7 is amazing. He taught it to his non-game playing cousins and they loved it. So there you go.
Appreciate that.
Okay. If you want to
Appreciate
talk
that.
if you want to talk to me, you can reach me on Blue Sky at Sen Feng Lim. Kat and George are
Still Dreyer Inc. on mostly Blue Sky and a little bit of Instagram, but we'll
mostly
say all
Blue
the
Skies,
things.
a little bit of Instagram. Yeah, you can come
Yeah.
find us at Meeple Syrup
That's
on
a
all
bit
the things. We're
long to
still
put in
there.
the card. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then patreon.com/Meeple Syrup is where you can help keep the lights on. They're still on. We'll keep them on ourselves if you don't support, but that's okay. And hey, I told you, I warned you that there would be some final advice giving, and now is that time for Eric Olsen's final advice.
All right, well, here we go. So, the final game advice, if you're a game designer, I would say is, create the kind of games that you want to create, whether it's, a very simple game or a very complex game, because that's what's going to be fun for you. But the most important part of that design process is to be absolutely open to feedback and get as much feedback as you can. I'll just say it over and over and over and preach it from, the top of the mountain is that no matter how good a game player you are, no matter how good a game designer you are, it's not about you as the game designer. It's about the experience of the people playing the game. And so that is the most valuable part of the process for me is when I'm sitting around at a table playing with folks and whether directly or indirectly I'm getting that feedback from them. And the other thing I would say is just because you haven't done something before doesn't mean that you can't do it going forward. So I had never published a game. I had never licensed a game. I didn't even know that such a thing was even possible 5 years ago. And here I am, and it's pretty awesome.
Look at you
And
now.
Yeah.
look at me, look, mom. Um, I'm not a spring chicken anymore, but it's super cool that it's happening, and it can happen, right? So if there's something that you're really interested in doing that you really want to try, then don't be afraid to ask questions. I guess that's what it comes down to. I've been doing it for 5 years and I'm going to continue to do it. I reach out to other publishers now and get advice all the time. What do you do for this? And what do you do for this? And how do you manage this? And what happens when this happens? I'm still doing it. And in the end, nobody really knows what they're doing. They kind of learn as they go. And it might be like doing a podcast. I don't know. But just, give it a try because you never know if you don't give it a shot.
There you go. Everybody, give it a shot. You heard it from Eric Olsen, Spiliar nominee for Flip 7. Wonderful game. Go play it if you have it. It's not expensive and it doesn't take much time. It's worth the effort to go try it. If you are at all into understanding and dissect it, like come back after you play it, listen to Eric's word about how he designed it, how he crafted an experience, which is what he did. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. George, what are we doing next week? Do you
I
know?
don't know yet.
Okay, well,
We'll figure it out.
we'll figure it out. So
Yeah,
come back
always
next
good.
week and see what George and Sen have cooked up for you then. All right, we'll see you later. Bye, everybody. Thanks,
Bye.
Eric.